What's going on, and welcome to the NBA DFS Q&A show. My name is Tom Vecchio. I'm here every Wednesday at 4 p.m. taking your questions about tonight's NBA slate. Remember to follow FanDuel on the YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook pages, taking your questions there all the time. You can follow me on Twitter at DFS_Tom. We have a good slate. I think we are in for a higher scoring slate. We also have a number of injuries we need to be paying attention to across various different teams. We just got some news recently that Nikola Jokic is now listed as questionable. Obviously, that changes things for what should have been a good matchup, especially against the Utah Jazz with no Rudy Gobert. So this is a big one. We know that LeBron is doubtful. Harden is expected to play. Anthony Davis is probable. De'Aaron Fox is questionable, has missed a number of games in a row. Nurkic is probable. And then we have a few secondary players, although I'm very interested in Robert Williams tonight. So we have a lot going on when it comes to this slate. I think that there are clearly a few top-tier games that we want to be focusing in on when it comes to fantasy production. I think that there are a few that could be potentially falling a bit further behind. Brooklyn and Sacramento is shaping up to be a fantastic game. Portland, LA also shaping up to be great. A group of teams between the four that don't play a whole lot of defense. They have certainly some great viable fantasy options. OKC and Dallas with a 206 over-under is just so low, combined with a 12-point spread in favor of the Mavericks just isn't super enticing compared to some of these, one, maybe two possession games we have across the slate. So I know that I want to be limiting or eliminating the options from Dallas and Oklahoma City. Outside of a handful, of course, there's no Porzingis for the Mavericks. So looking to Luka is always a great option, but don't want to be overexposing the lineups in that capacity. I think the Knicks are in a good spot. It's a nice pace-up environment for them, along with the Cavaliers, some weak defenses. It's a pretty good slate overall. Born to Laugh is asking Udoka Azubuike or Isaiah Jackson. Well, right now we have to technically, we would have to wait on the confirmed starting lineup because there's a chance that Eric Paschall is the starting center for Utah. Sure, Azubuike could still be in for some minutes, but we have to get some confirmation on the actual starting lineup. At this point, I would lean towards going to Isaiah Jackson for the Pacers, who's in line to be the starting center. Again, he's $6,000. Solid matchup for him going up against Orlando, bottom 10 in the league versus centers this year for the most FanDuel points allowed per game to them. So right now, I would lean towards Isaiah Jackson. It's kind of a tough, also generally a tough question to answer because they're at such different salaries, where Jackson is up at $6,000. Azubuike is down at $3,500. So, that would change your lineup construction overall in terms of where you're prioritizing the players and in terms of the salaries, where, the leftover salary where you would spend it. So, until we get an update on the Jazz starting lineup, whether it's going to be Paschall in there, I think that may change things for you. If you're looking for other options at those price tiers, let's see. I think Mobley's in a great spot tonight. He's a little more expensive at $6,900 compared to the $6,000 for Jackson. It's also, potentially whether you're rostering at center or power forward. I'm big on Evan Mobley tonight. I took the over on the 29.5 points, rebounds, assists combined for him tonight. It's a pace-up spot for Cleveland in a big way. They're 28th in the league in pace. Houston is sitting up at third. That's great. We have a 4-point spread in favor of 4.5 point spread in favor of Cleveland, solid 218 over under, and Houston dead last in the league against centers. This is a great spot for Cleveland. Obviously, we'll be looking at Cleveland for some other value options, not just their high-priced big men. We know that Darius Garland is out, so this presents the opportunity for 3 value plays in their lineup: Yedder Osman, Isaac Okoro, and Dean Wade. Osman is coming off a big game, their most recent one without Garland, 38 minutes from him. Under 1 FanDuel point per minute, but more importantly, he reached salary-based value, which is always something you want to be focusing in on. Brandon Goodwin, I'm high on him for the Cleveland Cavaliers. He also played, 28 minutes, 27 minutes in their most recent game? 27 minutes in their most recent game. He's the minimum salary, which is absolutely awesome. So, starting off a build with going to some of the value potentially with Goodwin and going to Yedder Osman, leaves you up with a lot of open salary. If we do see Paschall in there, and we get Jokic ruled out, I think that's obviously an easier path for Paschall, scoring some fantasy points. three solid value plays to start things off. I'm big on Bogdanovich tonight. I just think that the extra shot opportunities will be there for him. I mean, we're working with 8,500 per player remaining, and you can go any which way. If you want to get up to Jokic, you want to get up to Anthony Davis, getting them both in your lineup at this point is very, very easy. I mean, 7,200 left for three spots left. You can spend up for another star, find some salary relief in the $4,000 range, and you have pretty well-balanced lineup of players that should be seeing an increased amount of minutes, increased usage, whatever it might be, good game environments, all these sorts of things. So if Jokic does play, I think that's good. Embiid should actually be here, not Jokic. So if Jokic does play, I think he's obviously in a good spot. No Rudy Gobert for the Jazz. I see this as a bounce back spot for Denver. What are they? 3.5 point dogs on the road. If Jokic plays, I think this opened up at 2. If Jokic plays, I'll have more interest in going to Denver at plus 3.5. I do like the Nets tonight. I took the Nets at -4 a little bit earlier. I think this is just a clear bounce back spot for them against the Kings. They've lost what now? 6 in a row, 7 in a row. They lost last night to Phoenix. I think it's 7 in a row now. Just a bounce back spot against the weak Kings team. This should be a spot that they should, get back in shape. Just beat the Kings. I like the Nets -4. That's where I got them. Like I said, I took the over on Mobley 29.5. I also took the over on Alec Burks at, I think it's 14.5 for points, rebounds, assists combined. This is a really good spot for the Knicks. Do we have, no, Burks is not listed or he was taken off. So I like Burks, and I think it's at 14.5 or 15.5. Pace up spot for the Knicks. They're dead last in league in offensive pace. Memphis is playing all the way up here at 6th. Good game environment overall, close spread, 217.5 over under. I think it's modest overall. So I like Burks. I like some of those secondary players on the Knicks alongside Barrett and going to Julius Randle. Obviously, those are the two main contributors for their fantasy production. But I think, going to Burks, a player that could often go overlooked. I like him in the betting market tonight as well. The Charlotte and Boston game is, I think, one of the main games I want to be targeting. We've got a close spread. We have a high over-under. We have extremely viable fantasy options on both sides. I think we can be looking here for many, many choices. Like I said on today's Daily ISO, the podcast, I am big on Rob Williams tonight. Love the production from him on a nightly basis. More importantly, I love the matchup, and I also don't think he's going to be too popular. We look to Boston, and obviously two main usage leaders for them. Nothing surprising with Tatum and Brown, but 1.14 FanDuel points per minute is what we see Rob Williams, the Time Lord, producing on a very modest 12.1% offensive usage rate. Combine that with a very favorable matchup against centers. I think he's in a great spot tonight. I think he's in a great spot to exceed value. I don't think he's going to be popular in tournaments. That's the spot I want to be going to him. Most people will likely be paying up for Joel Embiid, especially if we see Jokic ruled out. And I think that, this mid-tier is where we could see some players go overlooked. And Rob Williams is one of those players I want to be focusing in on at the mid-tier. So the injury news on tonight's slate is always important. The Jokic news, we're not going to have, I assume, at the 7 p.m. lock. So, look to have some spots open or have your roster swaps available just so you can pivot in and out of whatever it might be. That's always important. Going to Jokic, potentially swapping him for Davis, and then having, another option in one of the later games that's a higher salary to allow you to, shift those things around, I think will make things a little bit easier. DJ's asking, how do you feel about Kessler Edwards over Mo Harkless? How do you feel about playing Trey Mann over Jalen Green? So I like Kessler Edwards overall, whether it's on this slate or just going forward, as long as the salary stays roughly the same. I would be on him over Mo Harkless in this matchup. The minutes are there big time for Kessler Edwards. He's small forward only, 3,900. Consistent production from him, right? He's only 3,900. He only has to do so much, but it's more about the volume of minutes that he's playing on a nightly basis, going for over 30 in most cases. He can get the scoring going at times, as he showed a little bit last night. We'd like to see the consistency when it comes to the rebounding, which, boosts his floor of points overall. So I'm on board with him over Mo Harkless slightly. Minimum salary for Harkless, which is a little bit better than the 3,900, but the role for Harkless and the lack of production, I think, is a little bit more apparent when he's not the primary scorer, even with De'Aaron Fox out. We're going to see Halliburton, we're going to see Hield, we'll see Rashawn Holmes taking up some of that usage for him. So I would lean towards Kessler Edwards. And then Trey Mann over Jalen Green. That's a good question. Obviously, the change in usage for the Thunder with SGA out presents a different story. So if we adjust for SGA being off the court, the issue I have with this comes down to Trey Mann. Not the greatest production in the world, but solid usage rate overall. The issue I have with this is that this game is a 206 over-under, right? That's where I'm not loving it. Meanwhile, Jalen Green is producing roughly around the same, but he's in a significantly better game environment. So the increase in usage for Mann is certainly better, but if push comes to shove, I think I'll be going to Jalen Green. I just want to be buying in on that game environment overall rather than a 206 over-under. And Dallas has been super solid on defense as of late, especially since Christmas. So I would go with Kessler Edwards and I would go with Jalen Green for those two questions. If you're looking to get some of those players in your lineup, Kessler Edwards obviously very affordable. Go to Green at 45. This is super easy. Like I said, I'm big on Brandon Goodwin. If you also wanted to roll with Yedei Osman, $8,700 per player remaining is absolutely fantastic. You want to spend up for Harden, you can do so. You want to spend up for Embiid, you can also do so, and you're still left with $7,400 per player. You get some solid value in there, players in great game environments. With Cleveland playing up in pace, obviously massive extra usage and minutes for Osman, Embiid, and Harden do their things. Then you drop in a few more players, and again, lineup is looking solid. So, as I said last week, what a lot of NBA comes down to, what it comes down to for me is, narrowing my player pool of values and then prioritizing the studs on the slate. So on tonight's slate, I think Embiid, Davis, and Harden are my top three, not necessarily in that order. I would maybe prefer, especially Anthony Davis on a point per dollar basis at 9,600, slightly ahead of Harden. And it's like Harden and Embiid are like 2A and 2B. I just like the salary on Davis a little bit more. So prioritizing the studs, prioritizing the value. We don't want to be expanding the player pool too much. You can't play everybody. So focusing in on the key value plays. I'm big on Osman as well. Chimezie Metu could be in there for, a set of minutes against Brooklyn, just because the Sacramento lineup is still a little bit thin. No Marvin Bagley for them as well. I'm not too big on some of these OKC Dallas players, although they do offer good value. I don't mind taking a few shares of them. Like I said, Trey Mann is fine. I don't want to be overexposing myself to, some of those value plays in a game with a 206 over-under. Cody Mann is a player that showed up a little bit in some of the initial roster, the optimizer builds that I did a little bit earlier. His production per minute is a little bit lacking when it comes to Charlotte. Although this is a great game environment against the Boston Celtics, he's a step behind some of the players, which is pretty clear. 0.65 FanDuel points per minute. He's a clear step behind even the fourth best option when it comes to Charlotte. So I like this game environment. I think I want to limit my, cap my exposure on Cody Martin, because I think he showed up a little bit too much in the optimizer when I did it earlier. So a player like that is good, but not great in my opinion. Like, those are always the players I have very middling opinions on, because, they could certainly go out there and play 30 minutes and post, 19 FanDuel points. Like, that's not out of the question for a player that's ultimately fifth when it comes to usage and production on the Hornets, because we know that there are several players ahead of them. I'm buying into this game environment pretty heavily. I like Charlotte and Boston to have plenty of points. This game between the Wizards and the 76ers, I think ultimately falls into the mid-tier for me. Embiid has obviously been unbelievably strong in the past month, really. He just got named, Eastern Conference Player of the Month for January. He's been absolutely unbelievable. The 10.5-point spread, a modest over-under, combined with the fact that we have the Wizards on the second day of a back-to-back, I wouldn't be surprised to see the 76ers just run them out of the gym. And if they're up by 15 at a certain point, Embiid's not going to be playing a whole lot. So I think that's why Embiid, combined with the salary, is also just a half a step behind Anthony Davis at $9,600. So if, push comes to shove, I'm going to roster Davis a little bit more than Embiid. I still want plenty of shares of Embiid because, as we've seen from some of these games, 27 minutes and 77 FanDuel points, 36 minutes, 62, 31, and 63, well over 2 FanDuel points per minute, I think is what we could be in for tonight. Especially if we do see the 76ers kind of take care of business, beat the Wizards as the spread would indicate 10 plus points. So I'm well aware that Embiid could only play like 28, 29, 30 minutes, but he could certainly go for like 1.9 or 2 FanDuel points per minute again. So I'm taking plenty of shares of Embiid, but he is just slightly behind Anthony Davis in terms of my prioritization. Do you like stacking Tyrese Maxey and Seth Curry over Caris LeVert and Chris Duarte, or should I look at Jalen Suggs and Franz Wagner? So I don't like stacking in NBA. I don't like call it stacking. It's just about like getting more exposure to a certain game. Chris Duarte and Caris LeVert, I think that's interesting overall when it comes to this game environment, because obviously a very, very soft matchup going up against the Magic. Again, not worried about the matchup for Curry and Maxey. It ultimately comes down to like, will they be able to reach fantasy value given the game environments? So, if their salaries were 100% equal and they're pretty darn close to it, I'm going to choose Duarte and LeVert just because this over-under is higher. It's a significantly closer spread. Indiana, if you've been following the NBA, it's like Indiana is getting in like a one-possession game almost every night. It's like down to the wire. So I would choose Duarte and LeVert out of that group. If you wanted to, get some shares or some shares of Jalen Suggs as well, because we do have a strong over-under and a close spread, like that group of 3 players in one lineup, totally fine with that. That's the kind of way, I look at like quote unquote stacking the NBA. It's not like I'm going out of my way to stack a team. It's like, okay, I'm stacking them because of the game environment, because we're looking with like so many strong factors for X, Y, and Z, the pace, the spread, the over under, the extra usage, whatever it might be. So that's how I kind of look at it. And I would say that Duarte and LeVert kind of fit that mold. So if you're looking to go that route for Orlando and you want Duarte as small forward, we want LeVert as well. You mentioned Jalen Suggs. 6,900 per player remaining is obviously very easy to work with. Yedai Osman, again, always looking to get some shares of him. Just 35 plus minutes is what he really should be seeing tonight. I said I'm big on Bogdanovich for Utah. He was one of the value plays I wrote up today on numberfire.com. All players in the mid-range, none of them are like super, super deep value plays, but 7,900 per player remaining is really, really easy to work with. Even if you are prioritizing, getting to a James Harden and you want to get in some Anthony Davis, like there are options out there that you can make this lineup work. There really are. And you're working with, again, all players that have solid minutes, solid usage, great game environments, high or, increase in pace, a pace-up spot for Osman and the Cavaliers. All good stuff overall. So I would certainly look to that game. That's one of the games I'm looking to prioritize. It's this game, Charlotte, Boston, Cleveland, Houston, especially on the Cleveland side, just because there's so much value, big pace-up spot for them. And then these 2 games, Brooklyn, Sacramento, and Portland, LA. These are games I want a lot of exposure to. Ultimately, 4 teams that don't play a whole lot of defense. And, teams that play fast, plenty of potential production on both sides for everyone involved. We can be looking at the high-end stars with Harden and Irving. We can look into the value with Kessler Edwards, even going to Nick Claxton if he's good to go. I'm still going to be liking plenty of Tyrese Halliburton, as I have for the past couple of days or past couple of games with De'Aaron Fox out. Prioritizing Anthony Davis tonight, as I said, one of my top stars on tonight's slate. Westbrook, I think, is fine. As I mentioned before, or I mentioned, I should say, on today's podcast, the Daily ISO, I have almost no interest in Avery Bradley or Stanley Johnson. For me, it's about Davis, Malik Monk, Russell Westbrook, and Carmelo Anthony. Like those are the players I'm going to. Probably in that order, I would certainly take Monk over Westbrook. At the point guard position, like I think Westbrook certainly has a fine salary, but I think I can make a better case for LaMelo Ball. We're going to Tyrese Halliburton. A little bit more expensive, slightly less expensive when it comes to Halliburton. I think I can make a better case for those 2 players. I would have a little bit more exposure to. Obviously, we're dealing with a ton of injuries here in the mid-tier. If De'Aaron Fox plays, he's been out, 5 games in a row, 6 games? 5 games in a row now? Like, if Fox is good to go, the question would be how many minutes? Does he have a minutes restriction tonight? Because ultimately, it's a good game environment against the Brooklyn Nets. No important updates. It's a good game environment against the Brooklyn Nets. It's got a high over-under. The Nets don't play a whole lot of defense. They play fast, et cetera, et cetera. Like, If Fox plays, I have some interest in him. It just comes down to how many minutes will he be able to play. So this is a game you absolutely want to be prioritizing. This game kind of in question right now because we're dealing with the Jokic news. That obviously presents a massive change for Denver. Should I stay away from Trent Forrest and play Isaac Okoro? I think Trent Forrest is ultimately in a good spot. He's going to see plenty of minutes. Let's see what we have him projected for. If it's updated, let's see. Trent Forrest is projected for 17 right now. Still got the game time decision tag, so that might increase once he is listed as good to go. Isaac Okoro should be pretty chalky tonight. I think that's certainly a fine play. I know I have some good shares of Okoro in the first builds I did throughout my optimizer, so I would lean towards Okoro right now just due to the safety that Trent Forrest isn't technically he's not 100% confirmed to play. And especially because we have the Houston game starting before the Utah game. So, if we do get some update prior to 8 p.m. when the Houston game starts and you want to shift to Trent Forrest, I think that is certainly fine. So again, on tonight's slate, I took the Nets -4, got them a little bit earlier at -4. I think that's a good spot. Just realistically, just a very clear bounce back spot for them going up against the Kings. They've lost like 6 or 7 in a row now. Even if they hadn't lost 6 or 7 in a row, like this is a game that they should still win. Like even if they come in, winning 5 games in a row, then they lose last night to Phoenix. This is still a bounce back spot for them against a very beatable Kings team. So I like that. I got Alec Burks at over 14.5 points, rebounds, assists combined. I like the over on that. I also like the over on Evan Mobley, as I said, over 29.5 points, rebound, assists combined for him. This is just such a good matchup for Cleveland. Houston dead last in the league against centers. It's a pace-up spot. Again, they're 28th in the league. Houston is sitting up at 3. We have a good game environment overall with a 4.5 point spread, good over-under, et cetera, et cetera. I'm big on Mobley tonight. I'm also going to be big on Jared Allen. Dre is asking, do I like Jokic? I like Jokic if he plays. He's obviously listed as questionable right now. Right here, listed as questionable. Like, I think this is a legitimately great spot for Jokic against Utah because they have no Rudy Gobert. We obviously know the potential upside for Jokic. So I do like Jokic. Yes. Whether or not he plays is yet to be seen. So I know I have I'm planning on having some build set where I can swap Jokic out for Anthony Davis, like that will be my swap. And then I'll try and shift some salary around, whether it be adding in Harden and dropping off someone else. Like that's the kind of swap I want to have set because I do want to have exposure to Jokic, especially because he's in a late game and B, he's listed as questionable. Like if everyone's going to say, oh, I'm not going to play Jokic, he's listed as questionable, it's happening after lock, I'm just going to roll with Embiid because that's the safer option. Like that's a realistic scenario that a lot of people will prioritize Embiid over Jokic. And if that's the case, if Jokic does play and Jokic goes, he's flying under the radar because of this and he's not popular in tournaments, Jokic could go for 70. So I do really, really like Jokic tonight, all things considered, but I'm prepared to make the swap if he does not play. So that's how you have to look at it. It's not whether or not I want to play Jokic. It's whether or not he's actually going to be available for the Nuggets. And if he does play at that rate, I want to get the Nuggets at whatever line they're going to be sitting at. Because if the Nuggets are fully healthy, like they can beat the Jazz with no Mitchell and no Gobert and no Joe Ingles, and their depth is going to be tested and, X, Y, and Z. And Hassan Whiteside has been ruled out. So it's shaping up to be a great Jokic spot if he plays. So I am on board with the Nuggets tonight. I would ultimately, if Jokic plays, like I would almost probably just take them on the money line, take them at the plus money, forget the points, just take them straight up. Like this is a matchup they should win. And realistically, like they need to bounce back after kind of an ugly game last night against Minnesota. So I will take the Nuggets on the money line if Jokic plays. So again, that's a player, a big injury note on tonight's slate. Will Jokic play? De'Aaron Fox, I have a little bit less faith in that he will be playing just because he's missed so many games in a row. Harden has been removed from the injury report, which is good to see. He should be out there for a full set of minutes, expecting the Nets again to bounce back. Jalen Brunson over Evan Fournier, and how much value does Aaron Holiday have in the starting lineup? Jalen Brunson over Evan Fournier. That's a good question. So That's a good question. So I don't like the game environment for Dallas and OKC. Big spread, low over under. And then there's a case to be made against Evan Fournier simply just because he's not a high usage player in the Knicks. Under 20% usage or right at 20% usage. Producing 0.71 FanDuel points per minute is obviously not great. Brunson, better production, higher usage rate, easy matchup against OKC, but the game environment isn't good. Fournier versus Brunson. That's a tough. I think I would lean towards Brunson for the consistency. If you're rolling with a cash game lineup, like I would take Brunson with the consistency. But if you are willing to obviously embrace the risk with Fournier and hope that he gets hot from three as he seemingly does, in random games against Minnesota, against random games, he can do that against Memphis tonight in a big pace-up spot. I would go that route. I would go Brunson cash games and Fournier in tournaments. That's how I would approach it. If you have to choose one, I would 100% go with Brunson if you're only choosing one. And then when it comes to Aaron Holiday, in the starting lineup, I think overall it's fine. Why am I not finding him? He played 26 minutes the other night, if I remember correctly. 19 minutes. Who had played 26? It was Goodwin. I would pass on Holiday. I would take Goodwin. That's who I was debating today earlier when I wrote up Brandon Goodwin today at the $3,500 tier for point guard. I would take Brandon Goodwin at $3,500 over Holiday. That's what I was debating earlier, and I think I'm just going to lean with Goodwin 10 times out of 10, just based on the game environment and his at least consistency overall. That Brunson Fournier question is certainly good, but I would lean towards Brunson if you have to choose one. But if you're playing both cash games and GPPs, Brunson in cash, Fournier in GPPs. You just hope that the 3-point shot could be there for Fournier. As again, he gets it going in random games. And if he hits 4 or 5 threes, adds in a few rebounds or assists, like he will be exceeding value at that point in what is ultimately a better game environment compared to Dallas, which is a 12.5 point spread with a 206 over under. Certainly not shaping up to be the best fantasy environment on the slate. So Jokic news, super, super important on tonight's slate. We know that LeBron is listed as doubtful. We know that Davis is listed as probable. All these are pretty straightforward. If you are going to be playing Jokic, remember, have your swaps set. Like, be able to pull Jokic out, drop in Davis, and then use that almost $2,000 of salary differential to upgrade another spot. That is what you want to be prepared for. If Jokic gets ruled in, will you be playing him? How much exposure you're going to have to him? If he gets ruled out, look to swap to Davis, make those necessary lineup changes. I'm here, start over, just kidding, upside play, Conley or Dinwiddie? Ooh, that's a tough question. I would take Conley in just straight up head-to-head. Dinwiddie has really been struggling this year, specifically from the field. Like, he just has these random inconsistency games, like not high volume of shots, 1 of 12, 2 of 10, 3 of 10, 2 of 9. Like, none of this is encouraging. I would just shoot for the upside with Conley, with no Donovan Mitchell, with no Ingles. Jordan Clarkson's listed as questionable, no Gobert, no Whiteside. Like, at least he's getting up a few more shots. I would go with Conley 10 times out of 10 in that matchup. Like, it may seem like a bit of a toss-up, but better game environment, closer spread, especially if Jokic gets ruled in, go Conley 10 times out of 10 in that matchup. So just to recap, Jokic, big news on this slate. I took the Nets -4. I took the over on Evan Mobley, 29.5 points, rebounds, assists combined. I took the over on Alec Burks, points, rebounds, assists combined. He's been hitting this number like pretty regularly. He's hit it 4 in his last 6 games. Again, I like this matchup against Memphis. I like the pace up spot. So I'll certainly be looking to Burks tonight, Mobley, Nets -4. And if Jokic plays, I'll be looking to take Denver, but that's yet to be seen. All right, so that does it for the Q&A. As always, every Wednesday, 4 p.m., it can be found here on the FanDuel Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook pages. You can follow me at DFS_Tom on Twitter. Until next time, good luck in your contests.